Ready? Good to go. Brilliant. Welcome to our Lazio tasting. I can see some new faces, so welcome you, first of all. Just so give you a quick overview of what we're going to do today. So this is 12 different wines, all from Lazio, 6 wines, 6 reds. So as I mentioned just before, if you do drive after this, please make sure you do spit out, because that's quite a lot of wine. And if you have any questions throughout the tasting, please stop me, ask questions as many as you like. I will do my best to answer it. And if you're ready to go, yeah, let's begin. One more thing, between the wines, please use water and breadsticks to sort of cleanse your palate and refresh it for the next wine, okay? Good stuff. So, Lazio, this is the sort of region in the central Italy. So if you look at the map, it's right in the middle on the west coast, and it borders Tuscany to the north and Campania to the south. When it comes to history, Lazio was sort of after the Roman Empire collapsed, it was a little bit neglected, if you like, and it wasn't until the 1870s when Rome was selected as the capital of the Italian kingdom at the time. And that was when the Lazio region sort of improved a little bit, and now it flourishes very nicely. When it comes to wine, for the last sort of 100-odd years, the wines were mostly aimed at the local market. So there were sort of this light, easy drinking wines with quite a lot of sweetness to it. There's quite a lot of residual sugar in the wines. And they were aimed at the sort of local markets to go with their local cuisine. And it wasn't until the last, say, 20, 30 years when the winemakers and wineries within Lazio, they realized the potential they have. And they used the new modern technology to change their style. So as of the last sort of 20, 30 years, the wines from Lazio are aimed at the export markets as well as the local markets. And the ones that are aimed at the export markets, they're a lot more sort of European in style, in the sense that they are fresh, vivid, well-made, technically well-made, and just very, very nice to drink. When it comes to topography, so Lazio is, in a sense, a little bit like most of the Chilean regions, where you have mountains to the east and sea to the west. And this is this sort of a fairly narrow strip of land in the middle. And because of that, when it comes to like terroir and the effect the mountains and the sea have on the terroir and wines, you have 3 different sort of aspects, 3 different main factors that affect the terroir in Lazio. So first of all, you have the Apennine Mountains. That's the main mountain range in Italy, and that's towards the east. And what the mountains do, A, they elevate the vineyards, B, they sort of protect the region from the northeast winds, which are quite cold, and they provide a lot of different aspects for the vineyards as well. So you have, vineyards which are sort of south-facing, north-facing, and anything in between as well. Then on the east coast, on the east side, you have the coast. So you have this sort of nice, cooling, moist breezes coming in from the sea, which sort of moderates the climate and they moderate the temperatures, and the otherwise quite sunny and warm region. And then specifically for Lazio, and this is quite distinctive and fairly unusual, their soils are mostly volcanic. And the volcanic soils, they free draining, which is fairly good for viticulture. They're quite fertile, and they have quite a lot of potassium. And that gives the wineries and the winemakers quite a few options. So because the soils are fertile, the vines growing in those soils, they happily produce a lot of grapes. And the wineries have 2 different options. They can either produce a lot of grapes and a lot of wine sort of aimed at the domestic market, or they can restrict the yields by using different training system or things like green cropping, etc., and concentrate the flavors. And these sort of wines with the more concentrated flavors, they aimed at the more sort of export markets. Then, because of the mountains and the sea, and you know the different soils and stuff. In Lazio, you have loads of different mesoclimates and microclimates, and as a result, Lazio is quite rich with the DOCs. So there are 27 different sub-regions within Lazio with their own DOC titles. Essentially, that means that they've been recognized to produce different, stylistically different wines for many, many years, and you know, as a result, they got the DOC title. And we are going to try quite a few of these wines. We also have 2 of the DOCG wines in our selection, which is quite good, and it'll be interesting to see what you think about. Any questions about the region? Sorry, I'm rushing this a little bit, but we have very limited time. And most of the information about the Lazio region you can find in our magazine anyway. Do you have any questions so far? No? Please feel free to ask. Good stuff. So let's move on to the wines. So we're going to start with the whites. The first wine we are going to try, it's made from 100% Trebbiano. And now Trebbiano is one of them slightly confusing grape varieties in Italy because it's given to several different grape varieties. So you have, you know, Trebbiano di Toscano, you have the Trebbiano di Soave, you have Trebbiano Romagnolo, and they're all quite different. However, you know, every single one's got the name Trebbiano, the first one anyway. And here we are dealing with Trebbiano Toscano. And this is slightly an underappreciated grape variety, I would say, because in the past they overproduced it. So Trebbiano as a grape, it's quite productive, so quite happily produce loads of grapes, and it gives you that sort of diluted flavors in the wine. This is slightly different. So in the past 20, 30 years, the wineries and the vineyards, they sort of restricted the yields and concentrated flavors of Trebbiano, and they produce this sort of lovely, fresh, vivid wines. So why don't we have a little smell and taste and see what you think. So Trebbiano has that distinctive citrus notes most of the time, and this is the case in here. So you definitely get this almost like a sweet lemon, sweet lime thing on top of this sort of lovely peaches, like things like white peaches, and it's got herbal hints as well in the background, so that like maybe like basil, that sort of thing. But I would definitely say that ripe lemon, that sort of takes the center stage. Overall, quite vivid, quite pleasant, very welcoming nose, if you like. Mm-hmm. The palate, extremely well made, is so well balanced between the acidity and the sweetness and the alcohol. Everything sort of matches very well. That citrusy flavor, again, that sort of dominates the palate. Again, this is almost like a signature of Trebbiano. It gives you that sort of citrusy, fresh flavors. And I don't know if you noticed that, but it has that bit of mineral touch towards the end. And this is almost like a signature of most of the wines in Lazio. Because of those volcanic soils, the wines tend to have that sort of mineral touch to them as well. When it comes to food pairing, I mean, this is, you know, I'll be quite happy to drink it as an aperitif just on its own. I think it's easy to drink enough to do that. However, because of that lime, you know, that sort of lemony freshness in the wine, you can definitely match it with seafood. So think delicate fish, your sole, your sea bass, that sort of thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say that as well. I could just drink that on its own.
Yeah.
Quite happily.
Very well made. I mean, on a nice sunny day. I know we don't get too many of them, but
just think of that. Yeah, it's perfect for summer. And then you're like, got it today.
Well, today is not too bad. Yeah.
I feel like it's a good beach wine.
Yeah, that lemony flavour in Trebbiano, that sort of works very well with any seafood. Yeah. Perfect. Good stuff. If we don't have any more questions, shall we move on?
Perfect.
Yeah. Good stuff. Right, second wine. This is from Cantina San Marco, and it's 100% Vermentino. Now, Vermentino, it's most of the time is grown in the sort of coastal areas. So if you think about it, you have vineyards in Provence, you have vineyards in Sardinia. So Sardinia is probably one of the mostly planted grape varieties in Sardinia when it comes to white wines. Vermentino di Sardinia is actually a DOC. Then we have Corsica, the French island. This is mostly Vermentino. and in the coast of Italy. So Vermentino is quite popular in this sort of regions. Now, when you smell this wine, this is completely different. So you don't really get this this sort of ripe lemon anymore. This is more sort of floral. You definitely get more of that sort of saltiness to it as well. And now Vermentino tends to have that salinity in it. And now I'm not quite sure whether it is because most of the vineyards are very close to the sea, and there is essentially a little bit of salts deposited on the grape skin and then ends up in the wine, or whether this is actually something to do with the grape variety itself. I'm not sure, but most of the varieties I've tried, they always have this sort of salinity to it. And you should be getting that quite distinctive, almost like, I don't know if you ever open a fresh almond, it's got that very distinctive smell to it. Yeah. A sort of green almond smell, very, very distinctive. Palate, initially it's slightly richer. In the Vermentino, you have a little bit more body to it. Definitely that minerality is coming through again, and that saltiness towards the end. Floral profile, so think white flowers and stone fruits, so like ripe peaches, that sort of thing. But definitely that salinity and that minerality is coming through nicely in here. Again, a great food wine. I'll be very happy to have it with some strongly flavoured fish. So things like grilled sardines or things like that, slightly like oily fish, grilled or smoked. It'll be amazing. So that acidity and salinity in the wine. Do we like that?
I like it a lot, but I feel like I don't know if I'm picking up on the salinity or the acidity wrong a little bit, but it feels like it's quite a powerful experience in a nice way. But is that minerality, is that salinity, is that acidity, that overall sort of dominant flavour of it being quite a rich flavour coming through?
It's quite sharp at the start.
Quite sharp, yeah.
This one's much more like rounded and smooth, and this one's much more like hitting, and then you kind of get like a gradient of flavours afterwards.
Which I love, but I'm just wondering, how do I differentiate those things, the minerality and the salinity? Because I know exactly what you mean with the salinity.
Let's come back to that with the wine number 4.
Okay, cool.
You'll see the difference there.
Cool.
100%. Yeah.
Cool.
This is definitely more of the sort of salinity thing, rather than the minerality. Yeah, good stuff. No, I'm quite impressed with this one. I think it's just very well made and definitely a food friendly wine.
Yeah, love it.
Any questions, Lauren? No?
Okay.
Good stuff. Fantastic. Right, if we can move on. Now, so before we taste the next 2 wines, please do not finish number 3 because I wanted you to try to compare and contrast number 3 and 4. The reason for that being they both Frascati. So do we know what Frascati is, roughly? Frascati is probably one of the most famous wines that have been exported to the UK. Maybe known not for the very good reasons, because most of the Frascati that are exported to the UK is sort of the entry-level Frascati, and they tend to be sort of easy drinking, slightly watery wines. And Frascati had a little bit of a bad reputation, and in 2011 they were good producers, of course, within the regions as well. But because of the fertile soils that I mentioned at the very beginning, it was quite easy for the wineries to produce lots of wine for the domestic market, and that was the sort of the majority of Frascati on the market. However, there were producers within Frascati, within Colli Albani, so this is the region to the sort of south of Rome, if you like, which is the DOC and DOCG as well, that were restricting the use. They were using different training systems. So most of the vines that grow the grapes for Frascati, they grow on this sort of pergola system. I don't know if you have seen it, but they're very productive essentially. But there were some producers who didn't use that system, and they restricted the use, and they produced much higher quality wine. And as a result, in 2011, that has been recognized, and they elevated those producers to a DOCG status, and they named it Frascati Superiority DOCG. So there are 2 different Frascatis on the market. There's a Riserva also, that's a completely different thing. there are two different Frascatis on the market. So you have the sort of easy drinking, not so interesting Frascati, and then you have this Frascati superiority OCG, which is where the quality is, and the difference is quite significant. So both of the wines so the next two wines that we're going to try, they both Frascati superiority OCG. So this is the sort of top notch of the quality ladder in Italy. Frascati has to be made from 70% Malvasia Bianca or Malvasia Tinata, plus 30% of other grapes. And the only difference between these two wines that we're going to try next is A, the winery, of course, but B, the age of the vineyards. So the first one is from younger wines, they sort of 5-10-year-olds, so a standard, if you like. However, the second one, so this is number 4, it's from the vineyard that's about 60 to 80-year-old, and hopefully the concentration of flavor will show that. Okay, let's try the wine. So the nose is quite subtle. It's not really jumping out of the glass like maybe the previous two, but you definitely get this sort of floral quality, definitely a grapey aroma as well. So one of the Malvasias, don't quote me on that, I can't remember which one, but one of them is actually related to Muscat. Yeah, so that's why you should be getting some of this sort of grapey, quite floral aromatics to it. And that sort of lovely sweet red apple, that's the main things that I'm picking up on the nose. Not huge amounts of minerality. I think this is more of a sort of fruit-driven wine.
There's a lot of different flavours hitting you just like right after one another, isn't it? It's just different parts of your tongue you can get hit with it.
The palate is just soft and round. Yeah. Towards the end, you get that sort of mineral kick, that sort of freshness. But this is wine to sort of drink with fruit, and it can match many different things. But I'm thinking something slightly richer, like roasted chicken or things like that. Yeah. But yeah, definitely a well-made wine that sort of complements the food and is made to be enjoyed. It's it's a relatively simple wine, I would say, but it's very, very well made. Any thoughts? Do you like that?
Yeah.
Sorry. I was just saying that there's a lot of flavours, a lot of different flavours. It feels quite, rich with flavour.
Good stuff, yeah. There's definitely different things going on. Yeah, fantastic. Now, so whilst we have this one in mind, let's just have a quick smell of the second one. So this is from Grotta d'Oro. This is their sort of top range wine, if you like, from very old vineyards, and it's essentially planted on an extinct volcano. So the whole Frascati, the Colli Albani, that region is essentially an extinct volcano. So when you smell this, so bear in mind this is, on paper, technically speaking, this is exactly the same wine because you have roughly the same grape varieties. It's the same designation of origin. The origin is a Frascati superiority OCG. However, the wines are completely different. I mean, so, the first Frascati that we've tasted, that was more on the sort of fruity side, definitely a fruit-driven wine. This is definitely a lot more sort of savoury. I get this almost smoky minerality on the nose. I know this sounds a bit silly, but when you smell it, I hope you know what I mean.
No, totally.
It's got that sort of savoury smokiness to it on top of the lime and lemon and apples.
It almost smells like perfumey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Completely different. And the same goes in the palate. I mean, this is a lot more sort of precise. The minerality. Can you see the difference between the salinity and the minerality now? Yeah. So this is a mineral wine. I mean, this is like a textbook mineral wine. You get this sort of lovely, lovely minerality on the palate where it sort of lifts your palate up, and I think it's absolutely delicious.
If we got to try wine number 3, say in 40, 50 years time, and it has like the older wines, that was like to age in the same way that this one has to vines, would it create the same sort of wine? Like
Possibly, it's done. Yeah, it depends on the location of the vineyard as well. So this vineyard is literally on the slope of the former volcano, and after 50, 60 years, the roots in search for nutrients. They went just so deep inside that along the way they picked up all these lovely minerals. With the second vineyard, this is further down, so they on sort of flatter area, but still they have similar soils. But it will take probably 50, 60 years by the time they get to the topsoil to the bottom. Difficult to say.
Is there any sort of key differences in the winemaking techniques between the two?
Not the same. So it's all stainless steel, tanks, no oak, nothing like that. It's very simple.
It feels wild that Frascati, not Frascati Superior, but Frascati would be considered sort of watered down easy drinking sort of wine, when these are so rich in flavour. And the experience of drinking them is so complex and it's like a big flavour that it seems, this is a completely different kettle of fish.
Yeah, I wish I had just a standard Frascati in here to show you. We don't have it, but
stock those.
yeah, the difference is it's a night and day, it really is.
Yeah.
And it's quite difficult for these people to get the message across because you add the superiority to the name, but the main thing that people see is the Frascatis, and straight away they would have right.
We spoke about that in different regions when we spoke. I think you mentioned in a previous chat about Lambrusco.
Correct. Yeah, it was good.
It's a very similar sort of situation where it had a bit of a bad rap, but given time, different techniques and leadership.
Yeah, it's I think the perception of the wineries has changed, so they're really sort of quality orientated now. In the past, you also have a volume, really. And I think it's great because they get the best out of each of the grape varieties. Like Toscano, the Trebbiano di Toscano is the best example. In the past, it was just a white wine without any character. Right now, you actually get some lovely flavour out of it. The winemaker who made this wine, he said this. I've never tried it myself, but I can see that working. He said that wine goes so well with the local. They have the deep fried artichoke. I don't know the Italian name for it. I can totally see that working with that.
I think somebody said deep fried artichoke.
Good stuff. Do you have any more questions? Smashing. Now, next one up, we have 100% Passerina from Vigni Vanelli. Passerina is actually native to Marche, so the theme that we did several months ago on the east coast of Italy. And however, they grow it quite successfully in Lazio as well. It does produce slightly different wines. So I don't know if you remember, but we had Passerina in Marche box, and it was very sort of citrusy, fairly light, very fresh, very vivid wine. This is still like that. However, it's a lot more on the sort of tropical side. I'm going to get to it. Passerina, it's one of them sort of up and coming grape variety, I would say, in a little bit in the same way as Pecorino was. So Pecorino was almost extinct, but because of how good the grape is, it sort of came back to fashion. And I generally think the same sort of thing is going to happen with Passerina because it's a productive grape. It produces a lot of sugar in the grapes, and it retains the acidity. So it sort of ticks all the boxes for producing a very good quality wine in climates like Italy. Passerina, the name itself, they say it comes from passero, the Italian for sparrow, because apparently sparrows like to eat the grapes. So that's the name. That's the origins of the name. Yeah. Anyhow, let's have a little smell, a little taste. So I hope I hope you know what I mean when I say tropical fruit. This one has this distinctive, almost pineapple mango fruit to it. There is some citrus, but it's a lot riper than in Marche. And palate is again the Passerina in Lazio has a lot sort of rounder texture. It's got a lovely sweetness. Again, the sweetness is not coming from the sugar. The wine's got like 2 grams of residual sugar or something like that. What you're getting is that lovely sweet fruit flavour from the grapes, from truly ripened grapes. And towards the end, you have that lovely acidity that sort of lifts up all the palate and the overall impression is quite fresh, it's quite lively, it's got that sort of vivid character about it. Again, this is a sort of wine out in Italy, but they drink Passerina as they would do a Sauvignon Blanc in the UK kind of thing. It's a sort of a go-to wine if you want to have just a glass of wine on its own kind of thing. But I can see that working with several different dishes. Definitely something that likes sweetness and a sweet sort of fruit flavour. Any thoughts to that? Do we like that?
Easy to drink that.
Sauvignon Blanc was the place I went to first. Is that's where you go to with this? You'd say if you like a Sauvignon Blanc, but you're looking for something a little bit different and a little twist on it, this is where you go.
I would even go further and say something like a New Zealand Sauvignon.
Okay.
And not a French one.
I was going to go with it.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Is it like a herbaceousness?
It hasn't got the same sort of herbaceousness, so that's why I said New Zealand, because French Sauvignons, they tend to have more of that herbaceousness. Yeah, so you'll be getting a lot more of the sort of tropical, depending on where in New Zealand as well. But most of the time, the Kiwi Sauvignons, they have this sort of tropical fruit flavour that's so attractive to most of the palates. And when it comes to that, the Passerina has the same sort of thing. It's got that sort of, that pineapple mango thing coming through on the nose, on the palate, and that lovely sweet fruit flavour as well. Okay, good stuff. Shall we move on?
Yep.
Nice one. The next one, so this is from the same winery, and it's 100% Bologna Bianco, if you like. And this is one of them sort of slight obscure indigenous grape variety to Italy. It's actually indigenous to Lazio, if I'm not mistaken. And it's resistant to drought, and it retains the acidity, and it produces quite a lot of grapes. And I'm thinking that's probably going to be one of the up-and-coming grape varieties also. But have a little taste, have a little smell, and tell me what you think. So, it's maybe not jumping out of the glass, but there's definitely quite a lot in here. The sort of ripe stone fruit, ripe peaches, almost like overripe. There's some herbs to it, maybe like sage, rosemary kind of thing in the background. Floral notes, think like yellow flowers rather than white flowers. The palate is just round and soft and quite grapey. It's got that sort of grapey notes to it. Very drinkable. The balance is lovely, and the acidity sort of kicks in towards the end, which makes the whole thing quite nice and refreshing. But quite rich. Yeah. I don't know if you get the texture of it, but it's quite a weighty wine in the sense, but without being too heavy because of that lovely acidity to it. Again, I think food wine. Yeah, we definitely want some food with it. Think creamy pasta. Nothing overly heavy, but something with a little bit of substance to it, with a little bit of texture to it. So your roasted chicken and creamy pasta, that sort of thing, that should go really, really quite well. What do you think of the Bologna?
Good.
Yeah? Good stuff. Yeah.
I agree.
It really stands out against the rest. I think it's like a real different experience in terms of the honey is the first thing that I get.
Yeah.
That like it doesn't feel overly subtle to me. There's a big hit of honey there, and I don't mind that at all.
Good. Yeah.
Certainly a texture to it, isn't it? Yeah.
A very different grape variety to anything else. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what our customers think as well.
With us saying that it's definitely a food one, it's definitely a food one. Is that because there's like aperitif wine is sort of, in a sense, easier? This feels to me bigger. It feels to me like size and depth.
So aperitif, technically speaking, supposed to get your stomach going to dissipate the food. So most of the aperitif wines, and champagne is considered as aperitif, because of the lightness and the acidity and so on. So generally speaking, the aperitif wines, they should be quite light, quite fresh.
Right.
The more body you get in your wine, the more fruit you want. Yeah. When it comes to food and wine pairing, I think I mentioned that several times. You always have to consider the weight of the food and the weight of the wine. Naturally, the richer, the heavier the wine, the heavier the food as well. There are a few exceptions, but most of the time that's the case. Good stuff. Shall we move on to the reds? Magic. Let's empty our glasses. Good stuff. Next, 6 reds. So hope you enjoyed the whites. Now with the reds we start with a Cabernet Sauvignon. So Cabernet Sauvignon is probably quite a well-known grape variety. If I'm not mistaken, the mostly planted grape variety in the world. Responsible for some of the best wines in the world as well. So think your Bordeaux, your Screaming Eagle, which sells for £3,000 or something. And some of the most prestigious wines in Australia as well. Cabernet Sauvignon is a grape variety that's sort of favoured by the wineries because it's quite a safe bet. It's quite easy to market, it's quite easy to sell, people recognise it, and it's quite adaptive, so it adapts to many different terroirs and many different regions, and it produces different wines respectively. So when you think about it, you can have this sort of very classic, elegant wines of Bordeaux, or you can have, big, heavy Cabernet Sauvignons from Napa Valley, for example. So it's a very versatile grape variety that reflects the terroir quite well. This Cabernet Sauvignon is sort of in between a Bordeaux and Australia, I would say. So it's not classic, it's not overly elegant, I would say, but it's not just big and bold and heavy as some of the Australians or American Cabernet Sauvignons can be. Let's have a little smell, a little taste. So, typical for the Cabernet Sauvignon, anywhere it sort of travels, it always has this black fruit quality, and depending on how warm it is, it's either riper or fresher. And here you definitely get a sort of blackberry fruit on the nose. There are hints of the sort of mintiness typical for Cabernet, but it's sort of very subtle in the background. The first thing is that sort of big, bold black fruit, that sort of blackberry fruit. And you also get that hint of that sort of smoky minerality in the background, but it's very minimal, if you like. Overall, quite a sort of pleasant, welcoming, Moorish nose. And the palate is sort of medium to full-bodied. It's not overly heavy. However, you get that sort of sweet black fruit dominating the palate. And quite a lot of tannins. So again, typical thing for the Cabernet Sauvignons is high tannin content. That's mostly why they tend to age for quite well when it comes to like Bordeaux and so on and so on. And the acidity. So again, sort of a signature of a Cabernet Sauvignon is the tannins, the acidity, and the black fruit flavour. And I think in this wine we get all of it. There's quite a lot of tannin, quite a lot of acidity, and it definitely makes it a very food-friendly wine. Cabernet works very well with mushroom and beef, so think beef Wellington. It doesn't do too well with sort of charred grilled flavours, and that's because of the high tannin content. So it can just make it a little sort of that, and makes it astringent, if you like. So avoid barbecue. Think more of a sort of classic Sunday roast with beef. And cheese. Cheese is very good with Cabernet as well. Any thoughts? Do we like that?
Yeah, we like that.
Good. I think it's a very decent example of a Cabernet Sauvignon grown in this sort of moderate climate. Not too hot, but definitely not cold climate. Well made, and very, very typical.
Yeah, it's really accessible. Very like just get on board with it. It's
lovely.
not too tannic, it's not too like it's just.
Yeah.
Yes, for a Cabernet Sauvignon, you got like, yep, that's Cabernet Sauvignon. That's
Yep. Good stuff. Yeah.
Perfectly happy with that.
Perfect. Nice one. The next one, so to contrast that, we have another French grape variety, a 100% Syrah or Shiraz, if you like. So when it comes to the name, it sort of connects a little bit with the style of the wine as well. So essentially, in the past, the French, they called this grape variety a Syrah, and the Australians called it Shiraz. And now it's sort of translated to the style of the wine as well. So anywhere you grow Shiraz kind of expanded throughout the world, and you can find plantings everywhere pretty much. But people tend to use different variations of the name depending on the style of the wine. So if you have, for example, a Syrah from South Africa, you should be expecting the sort of lighter, more savory wine. But if they call it a Shiraz, the wine is most likely sort of riper, more bold and fruitier, if you like. So that name sort of translated to the style as well. Shiraz, a very widely planted grape variety. You can find it pretty much anywhere. It's famous for wines like Barossa Valley Shiraz or the Hermitage in France. Quite popular grape variety. And it's quite pleasant. So when you smell it, it's just sweeter and more welcoming. It's got that sort of lovely sweet raspberry, blueberry nose to it. Definitely a fruit-driven wine. That spiciness typical to the Shiraz is sort of in the background, but it's definitely not overpowering the wine. The fruit is the main factor in here, and it's just that lovely sweet fruit flavor from warm climate. Sorry, I'm just enjoying the smell. What do you think? The palate is.
I really appreciate it's a soft and moreish.
Yeah, especially having it after Cabernet Sauvignon. So Cabernet Sauvignon had a lot more tannins. This one still has tannins, but the tannins are a lot softer, and it's just a lot rounder on the palate. It's a lot more fruit-driven, a lot more accessible. Shiraz famously goes very well with barbecue, so that sort of sweetness and soft tannins and sort of a char-grilled meat or anything like that goes like beautiful well. Definitely a good sort of barbecue bottle. Very juicy, like fruit-driven, easy drinking, and just moreish,
Yeah, see that, it's one of those wines where you're drinking it, and then suddenly you go to pour it again and the bottle's empty.
Yeah. It's, this is because the very thick glass in the bottle.
Yeah, I think if you had that with like a really juicy steak, then you'd be like, just want more. Because like they both work so well together.
Yeah, but you want a nice.
You're done within half an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. Beef burger as well. Good stuff. Do you have any questions about the Shiraz? No?
So does that become more just it's just evolved into being the style, like a Shiraz and a
Yeah, it kind of did. Yeah.
Really,
I suppose the wineries they almost use it as an indication of the style, because most of the sort of people who like work in wine or drink wine, they would assume that a Shiraz from Australia is going to be big, bold, and fruit driven, and a Syrah from France is going to be a more refined sort of savoury wine.
I think it's interesting because it's like there's obviously so many different grape varieties of the same grape variety, but they've got different names. Shiraz and Syrah just seems to have become everyone knows.
Correct.
Then you're like, okay, so we nearly now need to.
Yeah.
So this is Australian and this is the style, and I guess Syrah's more from like French wines or like that's more common. So then they create their own thing, which is really.
It's bizarre, isn't it? Yeah. But it's. Once you know it, and then you sort of know what you're looking for, and you go to the shop and you go, right, okay, there are two wines from South Africa, both made from Syrah. One is called Shiraz, the other one is Syrah, right? I'm a fruity wine today, right? Let's go for this one. It kind of works. But yeah. Any more questions?
Certainly does work.
Look, I love Syrah because it's again such a versatile grape variety, and in this warmer climates, it just produces this approachable, welcoming wines, and we can use it in so many different occasions. Just lovely, that sort of lovely ripe fruit. I love that. Good stuff. If we don't have any more questions, shall we move on to the next one? So we are going back to the sort of indigenous grape varieties of Lazio. So this is Cesanese. Again, one of the grape varieties that probably nobody knows in here, and I imagine very few people in the UK know Cesanese or have tried Cesanese. This is Cesanese di Affile. This is the sort of the better version of Cesanese. There is a Cesanese Grosso, I think they call it, which is sort of regarded as a slightly lower quality grape variety. So yeah, 100% Cesanese, and again, this is one of a little bit like the Bellona and the Passarina, this is one of them up and common grape varieties, I would say, from the 3,000 odd indigenous grape varieties in Italy. And the reason for it is because it produces wines that have good acidity, good tannins, and good levels of sugar. However, Cesanese is a bit of a pain to grow. It's quite susceptible to many different diseases, and it ripens very late in the year, which means if you're not careful, you can end up with sort of under-ripe grapes and not very pleasant wine. In this case, we are dealing with a Cesanese that was made with the ripasso method. So think your Valpolicella ripasso, the same sort of thing, where they used the grape pomace from the grapes, the dried grapes on the straw mats that they used for their sweet wine to sort of put back in the standard Cesanese wine to re-ferment again, hence the name ripasso. I don't know, does it make sense? So essentially there is, after they've pressed and fermented the dried grapes for the dessert wine, there is always some sugar and flavour left in the pomace, in that sort of drained grapes. And in order to use that, they would put it in the already fermented wine to start the fermentation again, and that draws the flavour and sort of boosts up the alcohol level a little bit as well. It's a very common practice in Veneto, in your Valpolicella, where they use the leftover from the Amarone. Yeah, almost, yeah. Right, let's have a little smell. So Cesanese, it's sort of famous for this sort of vivid red fruit, and we definitely get this in here. But on top of that, you get this sort of dried fruit quality. So because of that ripasso method, you should be getting some of this sort of dried fruit flavors. So think dried cranberries, prunes, there are herbs, spices, so think sage. There is a bit of chocolate, a bit of coffee coming through as well. Quite a complex nose, and this is quite typical of the ripasso method wines. So you should be getting the sort of base wine flavors, so that sort of fresh, vivid red fruit with the herbs, and some of the sort of dried quality from the dried grape skin. Overall, a very sort of pleasant and interesting nose, I would say. The palate again is sort of a combination of the two. It's lovely and fresh to start with, but then towards the end you get this sort of lovely dried fruit quality and that sweetness from those dried grapes. But the acidity is there too.
It's more acidic than the last one, isn't it?
Correct, yeah, totally, yeah. Cesanese is a lot more acidic, yeah, totally. But I think it works quite well to balance the sweetness of the dried fruits, if that makes sense. Again, sugar-wise, I think there's only like 4 grams of residual sugar, which is essentially nothing. But it's that sweet fruit quality that you get in here. I think it's quite lovely. I think it would work with several different dishes. I'm thinking like good sort of Italian sausages. What's that famous sausage with fennel called? I forgot. But yeah, anything sort of quite rich, quite heavy and meaty. That would do quite well with it. What do you think? I take this as the first time you've tried Cesanese.
That's the first time I tried it. I was really excited because I saw ripasso.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's like Kenneth was saying, when you like trying a wine where it's like got complexity, like there's just something a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
I think that's what you get from So it's not just like that baseline push, it's fruit, but then you get this next layer.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting. And it's still, you can still drink it. It's not, you don't immediately need to have it with food. It's quite interesting to try it as well.
Totally. Yeah. Do you like it on that side?
I like it a lot. I like it a lot. I might have a stupid question. So, I'm curious. Can you infer the level of tannins from the aroma, or is tannins only going to be present from tasting?
Only on the palate, yeah.
Only on the palate. Okay. Right.
Actually, that was a good question.
I'm wondering if I'm mistaking it for the dried fruit, because I smell that and I feel.
Yeah, I know.
From the aroma, I get a sense of like structure to it, in a sense, and I think that might be the dried fruit. But I like that. I like a tannic red wine. That's what I enjoy.
No,
A
tannic.
bit biased from what you're used to drinking before. You just an expectation.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a really lovely the dark spice. The dark spice of that I really like that. It has the smoky dark characteristics, but it doesn't just doesn't just dissipate. It has a spice to it and it's like an enveloping sort of flavour. I love it.
Good stuff, yeah. No, I'm with you. I just find it incredibly complex and interesting and just something different as well. You don't really see wines like this too often. So, good stuff. If we don't have any more questions, shall we move on? Good. Right, the next one. So that's the one. Hold on, let me just have a... Yeah, good. Sorry. Right, that'll be very interesting to see whether you're going to like this one or not. So this is quite a standard blend, I would say. So 2 French grape varieties, a Merlot and a Cabernet Sauvignon. Cabernet Sauvignon we've already talked about. Merlot is the sort of second partner of Cabernet Sauvignon. Again, most of Bordeaux wines, there would be blends of Cabernet and Sauvignon. Cabernet Sauvignon and a Merlot in different proportions. And it kind of works like a softener for the Cabernet Sauvignon. So Cabernet Sauvignon, as I mentioned, it's famous for the tannins, the acidity. So the Merlot is known for the softness, the plump structure kind of thing. It's got tannins, but the tannins are soft. The acidity is not too high, and it provides this sort of lush fruits to the blend. So they're very good blending partners, if you like. That's why you see a lot of it. This one, it's again quite standard wine without any oak barrels or anything like that. The only thing they did was they used indigenous yeast, which makes quite a big difference in the taste, as we will see soon. And they aged it for 4 months in stainless steel, but they left the sediment at the bottom, they left the lees at the bottom, just to add the extra flavour. Have a little smell, because it is very different, and I'm very interesting to see what you think about it, and I'm very interested to see what ratings we're going to get for this wine.
I love it when you say that. I'm so interested.
It's
super unique nose.
yeah, it's very different. Yeah.
That's up your alley. That's a challenging. That's exactly what that is.
Look, it's definitely on the more rustic side. It's it's not the most modern wine, and quite a lot of wineries in Lazio, they produce these sort of style, this sort of rustic, slightly smoky, slightly earthy wines. There's still fruit in there. It's relatively young. I can't remember the vintage now, but it's not like old or anything. It's just the style of the wine they aimed at. And I only sort of picked one wine like this for the box because I'm a little bit worried how everyone's going to react. There's still fruit, there's still freshness to it, but I love that slightly rustic character, that smoky earthiness that you get.
Sometimes I always feel I've got quite a bad nose and I get mocked for it. But I feel it's like kind of like a new leathery sort of smell.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
You know that really nice one when you get a new bell?
But then, when you try it, it's just so smooth, so balanced. The acidity is there. You have the fruits, you have that sort of, that rustic quality is still coming through, but I feel that on the palate is a lot more fruit driven than on the nose. which makes me think that hopefully we can get away with it. What do you think?
Good. Do you think it'll age well?
Not for too long. No, I don't think there is huge amount of tannins and acidity to take it. Yeah, I think it's ready as it is. If it's 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
2020?
22, yeah.
Oh.
There you go. So it had, what, 2 years and a bit. So yeah, as I said at the beginning, it's not the age, it's just the way they make it. And I love it. I think it's quite good.
It's the best red so far, in my opinion. My question is this: with the white one, we talked a lot, especially with that aroma that we got on the number 4 on the white wine earlier on. We talked a lot about minerality.
Yeah.
And now we get to the red wine, and we've talked about volcanic soil a lot with Lazio, and we've not really touched on minerality. Is minerality and the volcanic soil something that affects white wine more than red wine, or is this something that earthy tone is an indication of how minerality affects
No,
white wine?
it goes down to where the vineyards are.
Okay.
And the minerality is more present in the white wine because you don't get the tannins and the high acidity and so on. So that sort of masks the minerality a little bit.
Okay.
But mainly it's because of the different soils in those vineyards.
Right. Okay.
So for most of these wines, they sort of coastal vineyards, and they don't have the high content of the potassium in it.
Right.
Hence, you don't get this sort of huge amounts of minerality as in Frascati, where Frascati is essentially a site of the volcano. So hopefully that answers your question. But when you really put your nose to it, you do get that sort of smoky qualities to it, and that's that minerality coming through. But I think when it comes to these red wines, the soil is slightly different in the vineyard, and B, you have loads of different things going on that sort of mask that minerality a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, does it answer your question?
Totally. I think it's the best so far. I'm willing to be persuaded by 5 and 6, but I think that's
good.
awesome.
Good, fantastic. Yeah, no, I'm really happy with that. Yeah. Right. Okay. Good stuff. Shall we move on to the next one? Right. Okay. So the same sort of scenario where we have one grape variety that acts almost like a softener to the other one that's quite a tannic, quite acidic grape variety. However, in this case, we are dealing with two typical Italian grape varieties. So Sangiovese is the most planted grape variety in Italy, if I'm not mistaken, and Montepulciano is very close, if not the second or the fourth or so. Anyway, very popular grape varieties in Italy. The blend is quite common. So Montepulciano and Sangiovese, if you remember from our market box, the Rosso Conero, that's a blend of Montepulciano and Sangiovese as well, where Montepulciano is the bigger proportion. So the same sort of thing, however, from Lazio. Now, when it comes to grape varieties, so Sangiovese is the one that provides the tannins, the structure, the acidity in the same way as the Cabernet Sauvignon. And the Montepulciano is the one that provides the fruit, the sort of body, the flesh of the wine, as the Merlot in the other blend. However, they sort of produce the wine in completely different styles. So they aim at this sort of modern export market style, if you like, unlike the previous one where they aim for the sort of rustic, traditional style. So let's have a little smell, a little taste. So again, you get this sort of lovely, fresh, ripe fruit from the Montepulciano. So this is almost like a signature of Montepulciano. So think, black cherries, black plums, that sort of thing. So you get hints of herbs as well. Again, quite typical. Then the Sangiovese provides you that sort of fresh red fruit, that typical sour cherry smell to it. So fruit-driven, however, quite complex. On the palate, it's tannic. Yeah, that Sangiovese definitely kicks you with tannins and the acidity. you get more of that sort of smoky minerality that we talked about with the white wines. There's definitely that thing coming through as well. The structure is very good. And then you have the Montepulciano that sort of gives you that sort of lovely, sweet black fruit flavour. A little bit more challenging perhaps than number 4 that we've tasted. But completely different wine, and for a different occasion, I think. With this, I would say, this is your food wine because of the tannins, because of the acidity. I'm probably having preparative by now. But think the sort of classic Italian dishes here. So, your lasagna, your spaghetti bolognese, or things like that. Something with a sort of heavy, rich tomato-based sauce and a bit of meat to it. To cut through that acidity, through that tannins. Do you like that?
Yeah, the Sangiovese really does come through because it's so sort of tannic and heavy. Where you would sort of think there was probably the majority of Sangiovese, but I know I love it. Montepulciano is my second favourite. I really enjoy it.
I like Montepulciano again. I mean, it can produce anything from a wishy-washy Montepulciano di Abruzzo to, it was from Marca, I think, the wine called Merago. It was almost, as dark as my phone. That's how concentrated it was. And that was 100% Montepulciano as well. So again, depending on, what they do in the winery and the vineyards, you end up with a completely different wine. So Montepulciano can produce, age-worthy, decent, concentrated wines. It's just down to the producer. Good stuff. Do we like that one?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So this is our last red wine today, and again, I'm really hoping that you're going to like it. It's again something slightly different, and it's 2019. Again, it's a blend of Cesanese and Sangiovese, so that's hopefully you're going to like it as well. However, because it is 2019, so it had quite a long time to sort of develop and integrate. And it is at the time, at the spot where I like the wines the most. So it's sort of developed into this, it's not quite mushroomy yet, but it's turning towards that sort of earthy forest floor sort of character, but still has the fruit left. So think, dried fruits, so like your prunes, like dried cranberries. There's that sort of earthy, mushroomy quality, sort of just coming in, but not quite there yet. And you've got hints of caramel and that sort of sweetness, that sort of lovely, sweet, dried fruit. There's no oak at all. They haven't used any oak at all. It's just fruit aged for several years. So very complex, very different to anything that you kind of see commercially. Again, I'm hoping we're going to get good ratings for it because I really like it.
If you don't get good ratings for that, they've read how to do a rating wrong. Because that is
That's good.
Well,
Yeah.
sometimes I love about wines like this is like you smell it and I go, you know what, I want some cheese. I don't even know how it tastes. I'm like, this is like my perfect wine and cheese night.
Yeah.
That's the wine that you want.
But then, on the palate again, it's just in that sweet spot where, the tannins are there, but they integrated and soft.
Nice.
The acidity is there, just like complementing everything, and you have this, the fruits and the tertiary flavors coming in. It's just so lovely, so nicely balanced, and so interesting as well, and just easy to drink, like so good. I wouldn't even drink it with food. I would just enjoy it on its own because it's that good. I hope you. What do you think? Do you like it? Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. Perfect.
I like it a lot. I think I've got my phrase here. I think it's like the flavour, especially with the aroma, is like rolling, where like it sort of flows into the next part. The complexity, sometimes you would say that a wine is complex and it just has a lot of things all together at once, right? And I don't think that's very nice. But like this sort of like has a rolling aspect to it where you get something at first and then it flows into the next one. And like tannins and structure should be like, the aftertaste should flow from the initial taste. And this sort of does that. It doesn't just give you everything all at once. It sort of flows.
I get what you mean, because as you say, sometimes when things are complex, there's a lot of different flavours and textures in there. It can kind of spike a little bit.
Correct. Yeah.
But as you say, it does sort of roll, and it's
Soft.
like it's meant
Soft,
to do that.
yeah.
It falls along naturally and nicely. It's
Really lovely.
really nice.
Really lovely.
Good stuff. Yeah, it comes with age. You know, this is a bit of a shame that we don't see a lot of aged wines on the market. Most of the wines that you can see in the shops, they're sort of 1, 2 year old, and they made in the way for for early consumption, for immediate consumption when they released. But it takes time to sort of develop wine like this. You can't just have it straight away, and you need some time for that magic to happen, for the tannins to sort of integrate with the acidity and the alcohol and the sugars to give you something like this. And so what you're talking about, that sort of smooth, journey, if you like, it needs time. Good stuff. Yeah, I'm glad you like that. Yeah.
So we've looked at a lot of different Italian regions, and is there anything unique to Lazio specifically, traditionally compared to other Italian regions that sort of affect the product?
The volcanic soil, 100%. Yeah. Volcanic soil, that's the main thing that stands out especially for the white wines.
You got a lot of minerality.
Yeah. Lazio, historically, Lazio wasn't really producing a lot of red wine, so it's a relatively new thing for them to produce red wine. They're still very good, but there is nothing particular that affects red wines in a specific way. For whites, naturally, it's the sort of mineral taste you get from the volcanic soil. Because climate-wise, it's fairly similar to Tuscany further up north, and maybe a little bit cooler than Campania in the south, but not like miles away. It's not like Alsace and Burgundy and South Africa or something. Nothing apart from that sort of volcanic soils. There's nothing really else that stands out. But I'm relatively pleased with the selection from
It's really good. It's really good. You've done well.
Oh, thank you.
I think you've done a cracking job.
Good stuff. Thank you. No, thanks a lot for being here. Thanks a lot for coming. As always, it's lovely to have you. Lovely to taste the wines together. And I will see you again in a couple of months, I think. Hopefully. Good stuff. Yeah, we're good.